Welcome to part 2 of this series. I want to thank everyone because part 1 was by far my most liked video in relation to the amount of views. Your support is much appreciated. Blender community is so positive and supportive, I'm happy to be a part of it and be able to collaborate a bit with my content. So, on this video we will be adding the meat and the cheese to our already created bread. Since we will be working with glossy materials, I wanted to do a quick light setup to have a better idea of how the materials will look on rendered mode. To do this fast, if you don't have tri-lighting add-on activated, go to your settings and do it now. Select your top bread, press Shift A, and click Add Tri-Point Lights inside the Light menu. This will add a basic 3-point light setup, where the lights have a constraint to always point to your object. You can of course remove it if you prefer. We will adjust a bit the light since it is too low for our scene. You can as usual copy my values or go with your own. Now we will also add an HDRI. Go to the Shading tab. Change the shading mode to rendered to see how our changes affect the lighting. Change to World Shader. If you have Node Wrangler active, select the background node and press Ctrl T. Note that this is a free add-on that comes pre-installed with Blender. If for some reason you don't want to install it, add the nodes manually. The link to the file I'm using is on the description. You can also use one from HDRI Haven. On this case I prefer one with even light, like a cloudy day. To use the light from the HDRI without the distracting background, you can copy my setup. The top background node controls the light of the HDRI, while the bottom background controls the color. Note that the color background won't affect your lighting. You can set whatever color you like, but I will stick with the classic gray. Now that we have our basic lighting, we are ready to continue. If your cursor is not in the world origin, press Shift S to snap and choose Cursor to World Origin. Press Shift A, select Mesh, then Torus. Before you do anything, change the segments to 12 and 6. Move the torus roughly into position with G, then Z to lock movement to the Z-axis. Scale it a bit to find the shape you like. I'm going for a homemade super fat burger, but you can stick to a regular patty instead, if that's what you are into. Once you are happy with the proportions, go to Edit Mode. Select the inner vertex loop. You can do it by holding Alt and clicking it. Press X and delete those vertices. Select this loop and press Ctrl F, then choose Grid Fill. Repeat on the bottom. Add a subdivision surface modifier with 3 subdivisions to the render and viewport settings. Now add a displacement modifier. Click on New. Then select the convenient Show Texture in Texture tab button. It's the same as clicking this button here. Change the type to clouds and go back to the displacement modifier. Now adjust the strength. Since we will have two burgers, or maybe more if you are feeling creative, and we don't want them to be exactly the same, we can use the global coordinates instead of local. This will make the texture affect the shape different depending on the position of the object. When we use local, moving the object changes nothing. But when we use global, you can see how it changes as we move it. Quite handy to make duplicated objects with a bit of variations. Activate Shade Smooth. To isolate an object and make it easier to work on it, you can select it and press the slash bar from your numpad. Pressing it again will leave the local mode. If you didn't already, remember to apply the scale with Ctrl A. Now select the hamburger and go to Shading tab. Switch to Object. Add a new material and give it a name. We will use two different noise textures as we did with the bread. Copy my values for the noise textures. Now we will add a color ramp to change the color of the small noise texture. Again, you can copy my colors or pick your own. Also copy the location. We will add subsurface scattering. Now the bum. We will mix it the same way we did for the two different sized noise textures of the bread. Now we will give it the wet look with a glossy shader with a different bump. A bit larger, to look like it is covering the burger texture. We will mix the glossy shader with the facing output of a layer weight node. This will make the mix, by how straight at the surface you are looking, so the part you are looking at will show more of the color and the borders will become more glossy, giving it the wet look. Now, instead of this super smooth glossiness, we want a bumpy one, to also help the wet look. I will use a color ramp to tweak a bit the texture. I'm changing the factor to 0.95, by giving even less relevance to the small texture we have a more realistic wet look. You can change the roughness and the color of the glossy shader, and also the facing blend value to adapt it to your liking. Also, if you change the lighting of your scene, you may have to adjust this values. Now time for the cheese. Create a plane. Scale it down a bit. Move it up. Enter edit mode, select all and subdivide it 40 times. Select the meat, go to the physics properties and activate collision, select the plane and activate cloth. Move the timeline to frame 0 and press spacebar, then stop with spacebar again. Add a solidify modifier. Now add a subdivision surface modifier. Activate Shade Smooth. Now duplicate the meat and move it up. Go to frame 0, duplicate and move the cheese. Rotate the top cheese on the Z-axis. Then press spacebar again. For the cheese we will make a super simple material. I forgot to apply the cloth, so when I try to move it, it will lose its shape. If this happens to you, just go to frame 0 and play the animation again. Then make sure to apply the cloth to keep the shape you got. You can now put the top meat and cheese in place. If for some reason your cheese doesn't look like you wanted, you can always activate the cloth back, go to frame 0, make sure that the modifier is in the top of the stack. And play it again. Adjust the values to the other modifiers. Then apply the cloth again. You can also use proportional editing to manually change it. Or a displace modifier like the one we used for the meat. Congratulations, you are one step closer to finishing the procedural hamburger. On the next video we will be making the tomato, lettuce, setting up a basic background rendering and I hope, sharing the result with a hashtag and my Twitter tag so I can see all the amazing results out there. Thanks for watching.